the scene in the college classroom, Sam Witwicky's eyes start fluttering. He sees the codes like in his mind, and he starts going up on the. I don't know why I'm laughing so hard right now. It is funny where he goes on the classroom like stage and starts just writing and talking gibberish. That's actually amazing.
So you have no idea where he came from?
No idea.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the FilmBudsPodcast. This is episode number 579, and my name is Henry. This time around, I'm going to be doing what I did a couple weeks ago with the Rob Zombie film collection. This is going to be a re-edited, remastered version of our Transformers franchise review. So covering everything from the 2007 Transformers film all the way to the most recent live-action one, Transformers Rise of the Beasts. I wanted to re-release this one in this form because I think it was one of the more in-depth ones that I've done and didn't want it to get too lost to history. So hopefully this is enjoyable. Hope you don't mind. And if you are new to the show, maybe this is your first time listening to these reviews in this form. As always, please rate, review, subscribe, like, follow, all that good stuff. Follow us on YouTube if you are not there already. But let's go ahead and get into the Transformers franchise. Let's get to the first film, which is Transformers from 2007, which is directed by Michael Bay. Stars Shia LaBeouf, Megan Fox, Josh Duhamel, Tyrese Gibson, Rachel Taylor, Anthony Anderson, John Voight, John Turturro. Pretty big cast. And the synopsis is an ancient struggle between two Cybertronian races, the heroic Autobots and the evil Decepticons, comes to Earth with a clue to the ultimate power held by a teenager. So this one is completely separate from the animated film. This really got Transformers back on the map and really made it into the franchise that we know it to be today. So it was a huge, huge film at the time. I remember when it came out, and it was very much a big film of my childhood, teenage years, so definitely left an impression, for better or for worse. And I've kept up with this live-action series for the most part. It's not a very good franchise, as we'll get to, but it still has a lot of interesting elements. And starting from the beginning, and we'll get into Michael Bay as much as possible here, I think that what makes this movie work, it is a good launching point. It's not too long. It's fairly accessible. It's got good action. It was really Shia LaBeouf's and Megan Fox's big launch at the time. And it still has a lot of good fun, a lot of epic moments, and the classic Michael Bay isms. But I feel like as the series has gone on, even though from a more objective, critical standpoint, this is one of the cleaner, more self-contained of all the installments, to me, this one almost is kind of boring because of how plain it is, which there aren't really other franchises where I say that, but I think with Michael Bay, the more bombastic that it becomes, the more interesting that it is. And usually that happens when you get sequels. And so going back and watching this, it's like the character stuff is okay, surprisingly. But some specifics, Shia LaBeouf, it's too bad what's happened to him personally over the years, because I really love Shia LaBeouf. I think he's a great actor. He's not amazing in this, but the writing is horrendous, and just the overall character of Sam Witwicky is cringeworthy, and Megan Fox is all right. I think she's grown a little bit over the years as an actor. The look of the movie, this is so like classic 2000s Michael Bay. Like he looks, I mean, still now, really, but all of his movies for the most part look like they're shot in the 90s. They all look like the first Bad Boys, The Rock. He's someone who, even though he's very much an auteur and he has clearly been very, very successful, he's one of the most successful filmmakers box office-wise of all time, so he's definitely doing something right to get audiences in seats. But if we're just purely talking about him creatively, he is one of the only filmmakers who has been around for a long time who has not really matured. If you look at someone like Spielberg, Scorsese, like any of the people who started out 70s, 80s, 90s, or even like Tarantino, who started more, in the 90s, and Fincher as well, they have all grown and matured and changed up their styles to, for the most part, adapt with the times and really think, all right, how can I improve? How can I maybe make this a little bit sharper, a little bit smarter, more restrained? And I feel like Michael Bay, you could really interchange the release dates of these different movies, and I would not be able to tell you which one came out when, like if I didn't know that already. Everything has to be shot at sunset. His cinematography and direction choices of where to put the camera comes from, to me, it seems like, whatever looks cool. Where have we not put a camera before? It doesn't have to make sense for the story. It doesn't make sense for a character. It's just, oh, that shot would look sick. Let's do that. Which, there are worse things, but it gets worse and worse as time goes on. And like, there are shots where it will just be a normal dialogue-driven scene between two characters, and the camera will be at like someone's feet, looking all the way up at them, and it serves nothing. It makes the scenes incoherent. You don't know what you're supposed to pay attention to. His plots are always convoluted. You can't follow it. Some others, I don't mean to rag on him too much, because there are good things about Michael Bay, and I watch what he does, so I'm in some ways a fan. His sense of humor is probably the worst thing about all of his filmmaking. And you can tell he thinks these jokes, which are pretty constant, are so funny. Like, I could just see him like laughing in the director's chair. Like, these are hysterical jokes. And I don't mind juvenile jokes. I have a very childlike sense of humor, so I'm all for stupid stuff, but it's so in your face, so constant, that it just becomes like eye roll. A few other aspects that are very iconic Michael Bayisms are every woman in his, or at least every young woman in his movies, look like Victoria's Secret models. He always shoots them in the most like sexist, shallow way possible and dresses them in the most skimpy way. Then even Sam Witwicky's perception or interest in Megan Fox, where it's just the classic nerdy, oh, this girl is so hot, like, how am I going to talk to her? I'm such a nerd. And then it's just so like cringe, high school boy, immature sort of mentality. And whenever there's interactions between possible romantic partners, it's brutal. Then most of his characters have only interests in things like money, getting rich, getting with Victoria's Secret model like women, driving cool cars, and a few of those things, and in little increments, that's fine. Like, it's everybody's shallow sometimes. Everybody likes superficial things. That's just life. But it's in all of his movies, no matter what the story is, there's always those elements. I'd say 99 times out of 100. Some good elements that make his movies very interesting and exciting to watch sometimes is the term Bayhem, which is, I don't know if there's an exact definition, but it's really his signature style of action where there's constant motion on screen, and really no one else does action like he does. And that is something that's impressive on its own right. You really have created and influenced action a lot in modern blockbusters. That's not easy to do. And if you look at these films, if you look at Bad Boys, he's able to create very dynamic action where, there's stuff in the foreground, middle ground, background, all moving in different ways. There's explosions, there's cars driving this way, there's planes flying in, there's stuff that is being alluded to off screen that makes the action even bigger, like in Pearl Harbor, for example. Not only that, but the CGI, even in this film for 2007, looks fantastic. Like, there are a few little things that aren't as sharp as later films, obviously, but for a 2007 film, the effects look pretty darn good. Like, the Transformers look awesome. All the different pieces and mechanics of all that looks really good. And then he uses a lot of practical explosions, which, that's one more thing, is all of his explosions in his films look like firework explosions. That's not really a good thing or a bad thing. It's just a certain style, identifiable trait, I guess. But what makes all those elements, besides what I've already talked about, what makes those elements lesser or makes his overall movies lesser is he can't just have a 90-minute Bayhem movie. He has to have a 3-hour epic with 2 hours of plot and you're so exhausted by the end. Like, for example, watching this movie or watching all of these in a short period of time, not just one after another, but even in the span of a week, is not good for your health. Like, I felt like my eyes were burned off because of the explosions, the constant looks into the sun, the lens flares. I'm surprised I didn't get a seizure when I watched a lot of these in fairly quick succession. So that's what's exhausting about Michael Bay, is he can't just make a short movie, or at least 9 times out of 10 he can't. Some other specifics about this one: I think the overall setup with the Transformers kind of coming out of nowhere and then just the world having to deal with it, and Josh Duhamel, who plays this military guy, not a huge fan. I think he's pretty bland, and he appears in so many of these. I just think he's a really lame action hero. Not to say he's a bad actor, but pretty vanilla. I do also like the relationship and ongoing relationship with Bumblebee and Sam Witwicky. I just like the character or Transformer of Bumblebee. I think that's a really cool choice. I like the yellow design. I at least get somewhat invested in that relationship. I think it's better in the Bumblebee movie, which we'll get to, but it's all right in this. And I like the car, the old-fashioned car of Bumblebee's. The scene where Bumblebee rescues Sam in that kind of warehouse, factory, junkyard place, I think is a pretty good scene. And before I forget, another really cringe-worthy element. I guess they're memorable because of how bad they are. Maybe that's the point. But Sam Witwicky's parents are just horrible characters. Like, they're so obnoxious, and how they constantly baby him. And I know that's meant to be humor, but they're terribly written characters, and it gets worse in part 2 and 3. The climactic fight with the Autobots and Decepticons in the city, really good, and that goes back to the Bayhem action, which that's a situation where it works, and it's really cool. And my teenage boy comes out, and I geek out over all that. Another criticism that I even noticed before I even read that it was a criticism of the general masses is with Michael Bay's signature camera works, like, for example, the iconic one where there's a character on the ground and they see like a car flying over them or a transformer or whatever, and there's that very epic swirling aerial shot, which a lot of people have copied. That is something which, hey, that's cool on its own, but then when you see it in Bad Boys, when you see it in Transformers, when you see it in all these other films that he's done, it's like, dude, change it up. Because so many other filmmakers at his stature, at his level, sure, they have signatures, but most of the time they find ways of keeping it more subtle and not incorporating it into the same exact sequences, whereas Michael Bay is all about action. And so regardless of the situation, he says, all right, well, let's just do it again. It'll look cool. Again, it's all about what looks cool. Yeah, I don't have a lot of other points about this one. We'll get to, we have 4 more Michael Bay films to talk about, so plenty more Bay to come. That one is a heavy 3.5 out of 5. Let's get to the second Michael Bay Transformers film, which is Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen. Came out in 2009. Stars mostly the same cast, not really a lot of others. And the synopsis is Sam Witwicky, terrible last name, leaves the Autobots behind for a normal life. But when his mind is filled with cryptic symbols, the Decepticons target him and is dragged back into the Transformers war. So, of course, with the first one being such a huge hit, they had to do a sequel, and Michael Bay came back to direct, and everybody really same from the first. I don't think I may have seen this one when it came out. I was old enough for sure. Not to say it's inherently terrible, but I find that 2 and 3 really run together for me. I can never remember what action sequences went in what movie, what stories going on. Like, I feel like these 2 almost could be the same movie. Whereas I feel like 1, 4, and 5 all feel fairly distinctive. And there's a lot of things that I remember specifically from those. And in 2 and 3, I don't. I don't know why that is, but that's just how it's always been, no matter how many times I rewatch it. This one starts out with, I think the opening sequence with Optimus Prime is pretty awesome. And there's that very signature Bayhem moment where Optimus Prime jumps while transforming, and Michael Bay has the camera going one way and then Prime going the other. And so it creates this very almost vertigo-inducing but pretty cool visual moment. And whenever you see the Transformers popping out of the different warehouses and there's that whole chase on the highways, that's pretty well done. Then we meet back up with Sam, and Sweet Sam is going off to college, and his parents just can't take it. They're distraught. And there's the really just disgusto abarfo stuff with the mom where she has his baby shoes and she's crying like crazy. And of course we have to see the dogs they have having sex while all this is going on, because that's just so funny. Then the house gets destroyed, which I like that. And one thing actually that I do enjoy about the Bumblebee character is because of his malfunctioning voice box, he only can speak through different recordings, like bits of recordings from movies or from songs. I think that's pretty funny. Sometimes they use the obvious choice, but I actually don't mind that. And it's pretty clever more often than not. Then when we see Megan Fox for the first time again, we see her from the back. Her ass is like right in front of the camera, zooming in while she's wearing short shorts. Of course, she's into motorcycles and is a black thumb in this big sweaty auto shop with a bunch of burly guys. Like, I'm just like, dude, this is gross. For one thing, not that it's, I think, any big news, but Megan Fox and Shia LaBeouf, very little chemistry, if anything. I do appreciate, since Green Day is my favorite band, there is a Green Day song in this briefly, but it's the Michael Bay thing to, all right, what's popular right now? Let's choose this song. And so in that way, it feels very dated. As much as I love the song, it's just, come on, man, try harder, please. Then when we see Sam going to college, his mother's running around like crazy. I'm not going to recap the whole movie, don't worry, but this opening is pretty iconic in the worst way. There's Sam meeting his roommates, who of course have pictures of seemingly like random girls all over their cyber computer gamer room in their dorm. And it's like, dude, what is wrong with you? Like, it's just so unnecessary interjections of these visual teases, and you tell exactly what kind of person he likes, what he's into. Some other things, though, overall, the sound design in all of Michael Bay's movies are very good. I love good sound design in movies, so I appreciate that, especially when it comes to the Transformers. I did want to mention, with Michael Bay's style and blockbusters, I mean, obviously there's inherently a stupidity to a lot of them, especially when it comes to sci-fi and fantasy, that sort of thing, which is fine. I can watch the stupidest sci-fi blockbuster out there and enjoy it as long as it's executed well. But comparing blockbuster filmmakers, let's say Christopher Nolan, to me, Christopher Nolan, he's made comic book films, he's made a space movie, he's made an action film based around dreams, so pretty over-the-top, exaggerated things. And yet, he's someone, amongst others, who can still have a focus and appreciation for intelligence within a film, and appreciation for characters being smart, thinking properly, not just acting on impulse, or at least most of the time. And as mean as it may sound, I feel like Michael Bay, like, some people can make smart movies about dumb people. Most of the time, Michael Bay makes dumb movies about dumb people who typically rag on the people who are smartest in the room within a scene. And going back to what I said in the first review about his humor that I really don't like, the main reason, thinking about it now, is so much of it is derived from characters degrading others. And like, whether it's race, faith, sexuality, whatever, it's almost always the laughs are coming from, or he's thinking the laughs are coming from, people making others constantly, not a little bit of the time, and it's super obvious and blunt. It's characters making others feel lesser than. he is one of the most unsubtle filmmakers out there, so has it coming. Sorry. There's this scene at the beginning that is a perfect example of what I was talking about, where Sam is giving this presentation on his like great grandfather or something like that, and he has all of these historical artifacts from his ancestor, like newspaper clippings, documents, things like that, and it's really cool stuff. And the teacher's like, this isn't talk about your family history day or whatever it is, something stupid where he's just degrading here. That sucks. That's not interesting. Let's move on. One scene I do like action-wise is the fight with Optimus Prime out in the woods, like the forest. I think that's pretty well done, well shot. Cannot stand John Turturro's character. I love him as an actor, but he's by far one of the most unfunny characters maybe of all time. And John Turturro is very funny in general. Not in this, though. Trying way too hard. Besides that, not a whole lot else to say. Was a bit of a slog to rewatch. Really not a Bay film that I want to go back and revisit anytime soon, or unless I'm doing it for a show like this. So getting it out of the way, knocked off the list. That one is a light 2 out of 5. Let's get to the third Transformers film, which is Transformers Dark of the Moon. Came out in 2011, done by Bay once again. Stars mostly the same cast, except it also has Rosie Huntington-Whiteley, who replaces not character, but I guess for the love interest, instead of Megan Fox. It also stars Patrick Dempsey, Frances McDormand, John Malkovich, and a few others, so a pretty decent cast. And the synopsis is, the Autobots learn of a Cybertronian spacecraft hidden on the moon and race against the Decepticons to reach it and learn its secrets. As I mentioned with the cast, the big thing with this movie is, before this one really got into development, Megan Fox had compared outwardly, publicly, working with Michael Bay was like working with Hitler, and whether or not she was serious or not, there's some dispute on whether she decided to leave because she didn't want to do another movie with him, but it's also been brought up Steven Spielberg, who is an executive producer on all these movies, fun fact, suggested to Michael Bay to fire her. Hard to say. I could see either really being true, but she did not come back, which, I mean, I like Megan Fox in the first two films, so in some ways, it's unfortunate, but not really. There's not a lot to that character. I would say it's slightly better than 2, not by a whole lot, but I think it's a little bit more entertaining, a little bit lighter on its feet. Even some of the Michael Bay isms that I don't like that I've already discussed are not as prevalent in this. Maybe that's wrong, but I felt like it was watching a lot of these fairly close together. First thing, though, some bad specifics about this one. The deep fake effects with the presidents, I think it's JFK, Nixon, and then you also see, or quote-unquote see, Obama. That stuff looks horrible. And I appreciate them trying to do that way before most people were. Nowadays, it's more prevalent, whereas back then it wasn't. But digitally, effects quality really, really horrendous. Like, it looks so fake to the utmost degree. So I think that opening, the historical flashbacks, that kind of thing, does not hold up whatsoever. Also, I don't mind the idea of Sam Witwicky trying to find a job, and that being the young adult version of him and getting out of college, and then also having this crazy past that most people aren't aware of, and dealing with that whole dynamic. I think that's all right. The office that he gets a job at, he's hired by John Malkovich, who, I mean, I like John Malkovich, but the writing for all those characters is so obnoxious, and the whole stuff with Ken Jeong is ridiculous and really does not work for me at all. As I mentioned earlier, the action is much stronger, specifically even though it's absurd, the Chernobyl sequence with that serpent transformer moving through the different structures, and there's the tentacles. I think all that is pretty interesting, and some of the POV shots with the different soldiers with the masks on. I think that's pretty cool. Then there's also towards the middle of the movie, there's that highway chase. One of the Transformers hooks on to another one with these chains or something, and he's being dragged along almost like he's water skiing or something. I think that's a pretty cool idea. And then Bumblebee grabs Sam midair, and there's that really epic slow-mo Michael Bay shot. Then, more than anything, it goes without saying, the Chicago sequence at the end does save the movie somewhat. Even though it takes so long to get there, I feel like the middle of this movie really, really drags. And it feels like so much is happening, and there's so much noise, but in actuality, not much is happening. One thing that I can say about this movie, and really I'd say the whole franchise, the Michael Bay ones, that I can't not be impressed by is, in the Chicago sequence, the look of Transformers and the ships moving through the city, the effects and the lighting and the shading and the textures are so realistic looking that it actually seems like, especially in these wide angle shots, it actually looks like I'm watching a Transformer move through Chicago in real time. And I'm never thinking, oh, that's just a special effect. I think it looks completely legit 99% of the time. And when you see the huge Transformers just walking through the streets and you see the scale of them in comparison to the buildings, like, it's really well put together in that way. And so I'm always really in awe of that. And that's honestly one of the main reasons why that sequence really is good for me. Also, while I'm on that point of the effects, another great looking sequence that is another perfect example of what I was just saying, when Sam Witwicky meets the Transformers at the space shuttle station, when you see Optimus Prime and Bumblebee out in broad, vivid daylight, could not believe how good that looked. And it's almost how, if you go back to the original 3 Pirates of the Caribbean films, the effects in general, but like on Davy Jones, still looks way better than a lot of newer films that come out with the same level of money and all that. So kudos to Michael Bay for putting clearly all of the money in making sure those Transformers look spot on. Some other random things, though. Love Leonard Nimoy as the voice for Sentinel Prime, and the look of Sentinel Prime is fantastic. Love it. Frances McDormand and Patrick Dempsey are pretty decent. It's at least some star power, some good acting quality in these movies that they desperately need. Oh, and one thing that I think it's in the previous 2, at least in the second one, I'm pretty sure, but in this one at least, the idea of Transformers when they're injured or hit, that they bleed green ooze. Some people, I've heard, I don't know why this is a thing, but like I hear people say, that's so unrealistic, that's so stupid. I'm like, really, that's the line. That's where you're losing me, is they shouldn't bleed. It's not that we're watching Transformers or anything come from space or whatever. It's totally ludicrous. The desert Transformer, or he's sort of like, I guess he changes into something else. That's interesting, although it's very much a Mad Max ripoff when you first see it. I don't love how Michael Bay handles some of the alternate history stuff. I think it's a little tasteless, like with the moon landing and some of the presidential stuff. Like, it's not that that's bad inherently, it's just how he handles it feels very clunky and really not thoughtful in a way. Or like when you see the Transformers stomping on Abraham Lincoln's head from the memorial, like, it's just stuff that seems really unnecessary. I mean, it's watchable, more watchable than 2, but still very, very forgettable, in my opinion. And we'll get to 4. I think I seem to have a pretty different opinion from how people view 2 and 3 compared to how they view 4 and 5. So I'm looking forward to talking about those very much. That one is a heavy 2.5 out of 5. Let's get to the 4th Transformers film, which is Transformers Age of Extinction. Came out in 2014, done by Bay. Stars Mark Wahlberg, so no more Shia LaBeouf. Basically a whole new cast, as well as Nicola Peltz Beckham, Jack Rayner, Stanley Tucci, Kelsey Grammer, Titus Welliver, And the synopsis is, when humanity allies with a bounty hunter in pursuit of Optimus Prime, the Autobots turn to a mechanic and his family for help. So this one is really a reboot instead of being the fourth film in the, I guess, narrative story. And I did not see this one in theaters. I saw it maybe a couple years after. This, flat out, not say it's an amazing movie or even a good movie, but of the Michael Bay films, this is by far my favorite. Big things, the action is the most coherent and it looks the best. Even just talking about cinematography, lighting, it looks great, but I think action-wise, special effects are even better than the first three and even better than 5, I think. The cast of characters, like Mark Wahlberg, as much as I enjoy Shia LaBeouf as an actor, I think Mark Wahlberg's character of Cade Yeager, terrible name, yet again, for a lead, but he is a much more interesting, not complex, but bearable hero, as opposed to Shia LaBeouf, who's always just having panic attacks and yelling all over the place. Mark Wahlberg is much more of a calm, composed lead character to follow. Also, to a certain degree, the plot is a lot simpler, and more than anything, really, due to a number of factors, I guess, I'm always, despite the shameful runtime of this movie, which is 165 minutes, brutally long, despite that, I'm almost always engaged and entertained by this movie. Whereas I feel like in the first three, there are large stretches where I'm getting really tired of it. I'm getting frustrated. I'm getting completely lost. But talking about some specifics, so it has all the same, for the most part, the same issues as the other, so I'm not going to get into all that again. But some small issues that still bug me that are specific to this movie in terms of how he presents things. The way he, whether it's intentional or not, how he can talk down to his audience and really make his movies feel dumber than they already are. When you first meet Cade Yeager, as he's driving in the Texas sunset back to his ranch, you see superimposed on the screen, Texas, USA. And I'm just like, I really don't think at this point, of all the states in America, do you really need to specify that Texas is in the United States? It just seems so, even how a lot of filmmakers now still feel the need to put London, England, or like Paris, France. Like, how stupid can we be? I think at this point, with big capitals, with big states, you can cut out the second identifier. Of course, Mark Wahlberg's daughter, who's 17, specified in the movie, of course, she is like a sex object in how she dresses. All she wants to do is go to college and get drunk. And then all the men around her father oogle her and like basically catcall her, even though, again, they specify she's 17 years old. So that's just totally unnecessary and excessive. And I promise I'll get to some things I like. I just want to get all the minute things that don't always have an effect on the movie at this point with just how Michael Bay is, but they're just so ridiculous that I might as well mention them while I have the chance. But Cade Yeager is behind on his bills because he is a quote-unquote inventor, even though he's never doing anything right and can never actually create something. And he's expecting to pay off his ranch by this and pay for college and just ludicrous things. There's a scene where the realtor shows up with this possible buyer couple who are interested in getting this ranch or farm, and Mark Wahlberg basically scares him off with a baseball bat, and he throws the baseball bat at the car and hits it. And then, for some reason, the realtor drives through the barbed wire fence and drives through a wheat field. And it just seems so stupid. If you're trying to get out of a place, you don't want your car harmed. All you're doing is harming your own car. You're not hurting Mark Wahlberg's character for no reason at all. Even though there's a road right next to her, she feels the need to drive and damage her car by driving through a thick, barbed wire metal fence. And that scene always just gets me. I'm like, what are you doing? And like, why did you feel the need, Michael Bay, that is, to put that in there? But then some things I do like. Overall, the cast is good. I like Stanley Tucci a lot. Kelsey Grammer is good, even though his character is pretty goofy. TJ Miller, typically I find funny. He's all right in this, but he's a very typical Michael Bay male character. And spoilers here, it is really excessive what happens to him in terms of being scorched by this transformer. Like they're in this garage parking deck action sequence, and then there's this really epic, cool explosion runaway chase that they do, and it's classic Michael Bay in the best way. But then TJ Miller's character gets burned, his whole body burnt to a crisp in running motion, and they cut back to that shot multiple times before moving to the next scene. Although, one actually, speaking of another issue, and I think it seems to be widely discussed, is Jack Rayner, who plays the boyfriend of Mark Wahlberg's daughter. His accent is the most fake, confused, over the top, just downright terrible accent that it sounds like he's doing Irish, then English, then Australian, then like New Zealand. I don't know what on earth caused Michael Bay to think that was a good idea when he could just be English. Like there's pretty much one Irish joke in the whole movie, and that's really all it has to do with him being quote-unquote Irish. Some funny lines, though, which is pretty rare for a Michael Bay movie for me. It's rare I'm genuinely laughing at a line. I'm usually laughing at how bad it is. But there's a line with Lockdown, the villain transformer, where he's talking to Kelsey Grammer's character, and Kelsey Grammer is saying, well, we have a saying on this planet, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And then Lockdown, and this is really one of the only moments in all of the films that I felt like the Transformers had a true personality and someone behind them. But he goes, I also have a saying, I don't care. That line gets me every time. It just feels so authentic, like a screw you, snarky personality, where clearly Kelsey Grammer has no sway on the Transformers and is just a politician. That's a great line. It's more so ridiculous, but where Optimus Prime jumps out of the barn when the government agents show up, and he's like, here I am. There's a lot of really bad, goofy stuff in there that, for the most part in this, I don't know why it works better than in others where it's more cringe in those and not as much in this one, but I still get a lot of kicks out of it. I guess there was a criticism with the first three where a lot of people couldn't tell the Transformers apart, aside from Optimus Prime, which I would generally agree with. And in this, I actually like the group and the design of the core Transformers. So it's Hound, the John Goodman character who has the beard and the cigar, which is awesome. There's the Katana Transformer, played by Ken Watanabe, and then Crosshairs. But going back to Lockdown, I actually think, even though there's nothing dynamic, really well written about that character, I think how he's shot and the design, the voice, sound design really works and is a good, intimidating villain despite it being shallow. It still is much better, I think, than any of the other villains in the Michael Bay film. So that's a strong point. I love a good villain. Before I forget or get too far into this franchise, one thing I haven't really mentioned at all yet with Michael Bay is product placement. There are actually videos online where they will show all of the product placement in Michael Bay films, and in this one especially, and onwards, it's shameful how blatant and obvious and in your face it is. Because the worst one, I think, of his whole career is the scene where they crash the spaceship in the city streets, and Mark Wahlberg gets out because this guy's car was ruined by the crash, and there is a close-up shot of a Bud Light truck crashing, and then Bud Light rolling all over the ground. The logo in your face. That's the only thing that's being presented. There's no story element. There's no nothing. It's just Bud Light here. Drink Bud Light, basically. It's almost like a commercial. And so that I cannot stand. I hate that. And that shows you the shallowness of Michael Bay, or how shallow he can be when given the opportunity or given the right money or whatever. So I really don't like that in all of his films. And then even in that sequence where it shows the really, I'd say, like, toxic masculinity that he portrays, but not at all in a commentary sort of way, is when Mark Wahlberg is talking to this disgruntled guy, and he just picks up a Bud Light bottle, drinks a lot of it, then throws it into the guy's already damaged car and just walks away like he's the coolest guy on earth, like a badass. I'm like, dude, this is the worst. You did not need to put this stuff in here, and it adds nothing. It makes you dislike, at least for me, it makes me dislike those characters more. But besides that, and I know everyone has their own favorite Michael Bay shots, especially if you're a fan or a aficionado, the coolest shot that he has ever done in his whole career, and it also not only is just a cool shot, but it encapsulates everything you need to know about Michael Bay in a 7-10 second sequence. It's on the highway chase in the middle of the movie. It's all in slow-mo, and Optimus Prime and Bumblebee are launched, or like they jump over a bridge on the highway. And as I think they're both turning separate directions, and then Mark Wahlberg, his daughter, and the boyfriend are all flung up into the air. They're all spinning in different directions and flying over this bridge. And then Bumblebee pops the human characters upwards so they can carry the momentum forward. And then they burst through I think a tractor trailer, and debris goes flying everywhere. Then Bumblebee grabs the human characters, twisting around as they're falling over the other side of the bridge, and then they land on that side. And that, I can go back and watch that 10-second shot over and over and over again. That is truly where I'm like, Michael Bay, that was amazing. That is a perfect use of slow-mo, of Bayhem, of special effects, of maintaining all of that, but also being completely coherent. Then also another really epic moment, and it goes back to the villain, is when the alien ship comes down, Mark Wahlberg and the human characters are there with Prime, and then you see from the smoke from the alien ship, Lockdown coming through, walking down the road in this really epic, slow-mo, intimidating way, and it's such an epic shot. It makes me love seeing that villain on screen. But then after that, unfortunately, he kind of ruins it when Cade Yeager's daughter is taken away, and there's this way overdone use of slow-mo where Mark Wahlberg is screaming, "No!" and he's slamming his fist on the ground in frustration, and it's so goofy and overdone for the kind of movie that this is, and it, to me, shows that Michael Bay, he loves slow-mo, like I was just talking about, but he doesn't know when to use it and when not to use it. He just says, all right, let's just use slow-mo at this point in time. It's got to be good. And so you have, in a 5-minute sequence, you have the coolest shot that he's ever done with the highway chase, and then you have probably one of the goofiest parts of the movie with that fist slamming down. Then there's the alien ship sequence inside the ship. I think that goes on too long. I don't mind the look of the ship, but it just feels like it drags, and the pacing kind of, as bad as the pacing already is, it feels like it really comes to a halt for a little too long. But thankfully, you then have the chase through the city where there are the hyena transformers or the dog transformers, and there's that great moment where they're flying down the river or over the river, and one of the transformers picks up a boat in the river and throws it upwards, and it crashes into one of the other ships. That's awesome. Crosshairs uses the parachute, like jumps off the ship and uses the parachute, and another great use of slow-mo. And I think that one reason why I like this one, not to say that the others don't offer a variety of locations, but I feel like this one uses the global setting very well, where they're really country hopping and all these different places and cool visuals. And so I think this one by far offers the most variety in terms of that, which I appreciate, and for the most part, keeps the momentum going along. Then you also have the Dinobots, which pretty fake, phony marketing there, where that was a big thing in the trailers, and they're only in the last maybe 10 minutes of the movie, maybe 15. So I don't really care how much they are or are not in the movie. I didn't even realize that was a thing until I watched it, so I don't care about that. But I know that was a frustration with some diehard fans. There's also some really lazy writing with the human government agencies trying to take the Transformers DNA basically and make their own version of Transformers, where they call it Transformium. I wonder how long it took them to come up with that. So there is just a lot of lazy, like, geez, you couldn't have spent 5 more minutes on this, but whatever. But then you also have a another great epic shot where towards the end, and I think it's in the trailers, where Stanley Tucci is going, "Oh my God!" And you see this ship being basically carried over them. Oh, and actually one more logic issue that, not a big deal, but it sort of bugs me, is when they're on the alien ship, the alien weapons somehow are human-sized or become human-sized, and Mark Wahlberg, Jack Rayner, everybody are just able to use them with no problems. And while everything is already ridiculous and illogical, I'm just thinking, okay, so why would the aliens, the Transformers, have weapons for the exact size of humans, and or why would you allow humans to be able to operate them so easily? Just here, pull the trigger. You know, it just seems very silly based on how seemingly sophisticated the Transformers are. For whatever reason, this movie just clicks with me at this point. It's a guilty pleasure. That one is a light 4 out of 5. Let's get to the 5th and last Michael Bay Transformers film, which is Transformers: The Last Knight. Came out in 2017. Stars Mark Wahlberg again, as well as Isabella Merced, Laura Haddock, Anthony Hopkins, and a few others. And the synopsis is: humans are at war with the Transformers, and Optimus Prime is gone. The key to saving the future lies buried in the secrets of the past and the hidden history of Transformers on Earth. I saw this one in theaters. This was the only one. I guess I saw Bumblebee in theaters, but this was the only Michael Bay one that I remember seeing in theaters. And what piqued my curiosity was the medieval aspect. I didn't know how much of that was actually in the movie, which is very little, but that was still at least one incentive to get me in the theater. And I seem to like this one slightly more than many others do, at least on Letterboxd, it seems. I don't think it's amazing, and I think it's definitely a step down from 4. Not to say 4 is a masterpiece, but I still like it a little bit less than 4, but I like it more probably than 2 and 3. What I really got intrigued by, or I thought about when it first started, is there's this huge medieval sequence, like this big battle, and I would love to see with how he shot that, and it's so ridiculous. It's just Transformers, but a medieval battle. And I think I would love to see Michael Bay do a big, epic medieval movie, and where it's almost all action. It's insane. I think that would be, whether it's a terrible movie or not, I would still like to see that as a feature film as opposed to just the opening few minutes, because that was actually like really cool. And then all the stuff with Stanley Tucci as Merlin, don't love that. The character is just so goofy. It doesn't really work for me, but not a huge part of the film. Getting into the main heart of the story here, Isabella Merced, who really got her big break with this movie, and then she was also in Dora and the Lost City of Gold, which Michael Bay actually produced as well. So one scene and one bit of writing that I just have to point out, especially considering she's meant to be like maybe 14, 15 years old at best. There's this scene where she rescues this group of boys. Like, actually, they're more like middle school, I guess, in how they act. But when you first meet her, she's a super gung-ho, strong fighter, survivor character. And then all the boys who she rescues are very oblivious and not at all capable of fighting. And one of the boys, like the nerdy-looking boy, is like, "So what's your workout routine?" And then she says something snarky to him, and the boy goes, "I love her." And it's so cringe, especially considering the age of the characters and how Michael Bay presents that. She might as well be a 30-year-old. But besides that, that whole scene, I do like that action sequence where you meet Canopy, and then you meet Squeak, whatever it is, the little bot of Isabella Merced's. I think I like that character. The run-in with Mark Wahlberg, and there's that little showdown with Bumblebee, and he tries to transform, but then he gets blown apart. I love all that stuff. I like the look of the junkyard that Mark Wahlberg and the other Transformers are staying at. We also have a Transformer voiced by Steve Buscemi, which is good. But also the female lead, played by Laura Haddock. Of course, had to point it out. Of course, Michael Bay has to make her a bad driver. There's that scene that they just had to put in there as a joke. She's pulling into work and she is stopping or putting on the brakes, and she runs into all the bicycles that are locked up and they all fall over. It's like, ha ha. Such low-hanging fruit. Drives me nuts. That character I still like overall, and I think she and Mark Wahlberg have an alright chemistry together. It's nothing amazing, but I appreciate that sort of character in this, who is seemingly more educated and sophisticated, whereas Mark Wahlberg is not. The town attack sequence isn't too bad. I do feel like there are points where it becomes too incoherent, even for me, in terms of the Bayhem and the editing. Also, one thing I do like, not to say that it's groundbreaking or amazing, but I don't mind the look of the villain in this, Quintessa, like the Medusa sort of character. I like the look of that, special effects wise. The sound of her voice, that bassy, metallic-y voice, I really like all that. And I like the look of Cybertron as well. It is 2.5 hours long. It's a little bit shorter than 4, but I feel like when they get to the mansion owned by Anthony Hopkins, who is talking complete gibberish this entire movie, but he's still nice to have in it. I feel like when it gets there, the pacing, not to say there's amazing pacing in this movie anyways, but the pacing even more so really falls off. I feel like it really becomes pretty inert, and they stay there for so long. And then there's this ridiculous sequence that they somehow end up on a submarine, and they're able to control the submarine, which is completely nonsensical. Like, how does that even happen? I couldn't even tell you why they're on that submarine. It's so convoluted. Oh, and before I forget, one small sequence that, as I would like to see the medieval Michael Bay movie, I would love to see, as they show in this, the World War II scene where Bumblebee is fighting the Nazis. I would love to see a Transformers film set in World War II. I think that'd be so cool. Maybe we'll get that one day. I doubt it, but that was a really intriguing, crazy idea to me that I hadn't really thought of before. Some other aspects, I like the score in really all of these films. It's nothing brilliant, but I still like it. The cinematography and lighting is good, I think, for the most part. Then probably my favorite action scene in the movie in terms of the direction and just the overall visuals of it is I guess he turns into quote-unquote Nemesis Prime, the fight with him and Bumblebee on top of that ship or the submarine, whatever it is, like that cliffside. I think that looks awesome, and I love the choreography, and it's really pretty brutal and violent, and the camera's swirling all around. I love that sequence a lot. The final fight goes on, as with most, goes on a little too long. I don't mind the setting at Stonehenge. I think that's pretty cool, and I like a lot of the different little moments within it, but it would be middle of the pack of all the films that I'm talking about here, not just the Michael Bay ones. That one is a heavy 3 out of 5. Let's get to the 6th Transformers film. which is Bumblebee. Came out in 2018, 1 year after The Last Knight. It's directed by Travis Knight, who is the CEO of Laika Studios, the animation studio who did Coraline, Paranorman, The Box Trolls, etc. Great studio. It stars Haley Steinfeld, Jorge Lindenborg Jr., John Cena, Pamela Adlon, and the synopsis is: on the run in the year 1987, Bumblebee finds refuge in a junkyard in a small California beach town. On the cusp of turning 18 and trying to find her place in the world, Charlie Watson discovers Bumblebee, battle-scarred and broken. So I remember when this one was announced, and I was very happy to see that because I was like, all right, cool, a different vision, a different style. Not only that, but I thought the origin, really, I guess you could say, Bumblebee and how he got to Earth, I loved all that. Them sort of just randomly choosing Travis Knight, who I loved all of the Laika Studios films, and I was like, all right, cool. I wouldn't have thought of him to do this, but why not? And I realized rewatching this, I don't think I had actually gone all the way through it since I had seen it in the theaters. So it had been a long time. Even when I first saw it, I really enjoyed it. And now having had just one more Transformers film since, this is still by far my favorite. It was at the time, and it still is. Biggest thing, though, even though there are things I like about Michael Bay, as I've talked about, this movie feels like it was made by an actual person. And that sounds kind of mean, and I know that there's a time and place for the Bay ones, and something that works for me and I have fun with, but this movie, it's charming, it's fun, it's got character. It's not the style of Michael Bay where even the quietest, most mundane scene is, look at me, I'm Michael Bay. You know, it's very restrained and creating a very well-rounded world. And even though the action is good and it's got blockbuster elements, in the best way, it feels very Spielbergian, because especially the relationship between Haley Steinfeld and Bumblebee is very E.T.-esque, but in a really good way. It doesn't feel like a ripoff of that. Coming off of the 5 films, it's easy to be like, this is so bland, it's so vanilla, but really, if you look at the character work, it's really strong. And I could care less about the plot, like I don't really care about plots in any movies. And maybe that's why some people don't like this one as much, because it's so simple. Talking some specifics, though, right from the get-go, I love the look of Cybertron that has that mostly yellow hue to it, and that yellow underbelly. I really like how it looks there, and that opening fight is very good. Haley Steinfeld, who I first saw in her big breakout, which was True Grit, I haven't followed everything that she's done, but I'm always happy to see her in a movie, and I think she has good range, and I thought her casting was perfect. I think she works well with human characters, but also in whatever way they did it, to have her actually looking at something or just talking into thin air at a green screen. She played off Bumblebee, quote-unquote, incredibly well. And with this being set in the 80s, it's very easy for the rebellious, loner, outcast teenager to feel very goofy and like a caricature, but I thought her character was very, very compelling and fun and relatable. Not only that, but I totally bought her more as a mechanic, black thumb sort of person, as opposed to Megan Fox, whereas respectfully, I did not buy her for a single second being this car, truck aficionado, like, can fix anything, auto shop worker. Did not buy that for a moment. I felt like that was a Michael Bay dream girl sort of thing. Whereas in this, she felt authentic. And I could buy her kind of being into the vintage stuff, the unconventional things, not always having the most sense, but still having a knack for it. And then also what allowed for more development there, as opposed to Megan Fox, which had nothing. We learn about in this Haley Steinfeld's father dying in whatever way, and therefore us learning that that's where she got her mechanical skills from. And that's one of the many reasons why she misses him so much. And then you see the rest of the family with this stepdad getting along fine and the younger brother connecting with them very easily where she doesn't. I think it's all, it's very standard stuff, but I was never once thinking, oh, this is so cheesy, it's so lame, like, seen this before, which I have. Everybody has, but it works. John Cena has a big part in this. He plays the sort of villain in this, more so just an antagonist, because he's mainly just doing his job, whereas there are the bad Transformers in the story as well. But I like him. He's not an amazing actor, but he's got a decent presence. I think he has all right comedic chops, so I have no problems with him. I think if anyone has not seen a Transformers film, this is a good one to start with, because the Michael Bay ones are so out there that it would be harder to immediately connect with if you weren't already a Michael Bay fan and or a big action blockbuster person. I think that this is one that most people could get into. It's hard to really hate. Some other things, the editing is very clean, like the transitions from whether it be Cybertron to Earth or whatever it might be, very clever, creative transitions that I notice a lot on this watch. And it looks very good overall, cinematography-wise, lighting. Some action sequences, the one where Bumblebee lands on Earth and he encounters John Cena's special agent government group, and then where Bumblebee runs away and there's that whole chase and then eventual fight with one of the bad Transformers. The chase or car chase through the tunnel where there's that, to me, it was a Men in Black homage where Bumblebee goes on the ceiling of the tunnel. I think that was pretty clever. When Bumblebee is in the house and is causing destruction purely by accident, and that's what really feels a lot like E.T. The prank that they pull on the bully at school, the girl, the beach sequence where she's trying to teach Bumblebee how to hide, the sequence out in the woods where she's inspecting his malfunction or missing voice box. Like, there are so many quiet scenes that you would never ever have in a Michael Bay Transformers film that allow you to sit with those characters, get to know them, even just get to learn their quirks and facial expressions, as silly as that sounds. You just never really get a chance to ground yourself with someone, to me, in the Michael Bay ones, whereas in this, it was such a breath of fresh air after having watched those 5. I was like, wow, this is what a true movie feels like, who actually has a sense of narrative, who cares about the story. It's not, here, I'm putting my style in Transformers or on this or on that. It's, all right, I'm a storyteller. How can I find a way to create the best, most well-rounded picture of this situation, of this story? And I hope Travis Knight does a lot more films like this, because I think he is, having come from animation, I think he is a perfect person to direct films like this. Besides that, the soundtrack is good. A lot of somewhat popular, but not exactly what you would expect. 80s radio choices, I like those a lot. The score is good. It's not too long. So I'm a big fan of this movie. I wish it had done better financially, so maybe we will get more films in this nature, or maybe even a sequel in some way. Whether you're a Transformers head or not, I would still give it a look. I think you'd be surprised. That one is a 4.5 out of 5. Let's get to the last film in the Transformers franchise to date, which is Transformers Rise of the Beast. It is directed by Stephen Caple Jr., who also directed Creed 2. Stars Anthony Ramos, Dominique Fishback, Luna Lauren Velez, Dean Scott Vasquez, not a lot of other big names. And the synopsis is, during the 90s, a new faction of Transformers, the Maximals, join the Autobots as allies in the battle for Earth. So this one is completely separate from the Michael Bay films and from Bumblebee, and doesn't have any correlation to Transformers 1 either, as far as I know. So it's in its own little franchise. I guess in some ways is a reboot after Bumblebee. I don't know. There's something about this movie. I know it got fairly mixed reviews when it came out. Some people really liked it. Some people said it was like the best one since the first one that I read. But at least on Letterboxd, it's a little down the middle. I think flat out, even with all the crap about the Michael Bay ones that I don't like, and how there are some really low lows, of these 7 films, right now, this one is my least favorite. And it's not offensively, like there's no Michael Bay isms in this or something that caused me to get super turned off by it. The biggest problem, and I can say that Michael Bay doesn't really do this to his strength, his benefit. The worst thing you can do in a movie like this, to me, is bore the audience. And I found this movie to be so boring. Like, I don't care if it's goofy. I don't care if they introduce a new set of characters, which I like the main guy, Anthony Ramos. He's a good actor for sure. I've seen him in other things. But, like, I was just struggling to stay awake. It's not even that long, but I feel like I was really phasing out all the time, trying to care, and just almost never really was. Story-wise, it's pretty cut and dry, nothing crazy. I do like the introduction of the Maximals. I like the gorilla transformer, the birds, like robot birds. But at least Michael Bay went so far exaggerated over the top with his characters that in one way or the other, they were memorable, like Hound or some of the other Transformer characters in that. And I definitely don't have a problem with those actors that are in this, like Pete Davidson, Peter Dinklage. I think I love everybody in it, but there's just nothing to those characters. That's a big problem. The human characters could not tell you a single thing about them. I appreciate that they're trying to give something with this troubled son trying to help his family, his siblings. I get that. I can appreciate that, but it's so threadbare and really did not get a lot from it. Visually, really bland. Like Creed 2, which this, director did, I like Creed 2 for sure. So nothing against him as a overall director, but I think that he was not the right person to do this movie, especially since it's the first one really laying the groundwork for the rest of this franchise, whatever it's going to be. So from the production creativity standpoint, not much to write home about. Talking some specific scenes, though, I do like the death of Bumblebee. I thought that was effective. Probably and it was only the beginning portion of the sequence in Peru. I thought that was good, where like the robot birds come in and there's that sequence on the highway. That was, I think, my favorite part of the movie in terms of just being engaged. I just feel like it's offensive to me in how inoffensive it is. Like there's just nothing, but I haven't been so, I don't know if disappointment is the right word, because I'm not some big Transformers fan, but really, really, I guess, let down to a certain degree in where this franchise seems to be going. So that's why I'm hopeful for Transformers 1. And then, because really, I don't have a lot of other things to say about it. It all kind of runs together for me. It's pretty forgettable. But the only other thing that even just puts the cherry on top for why I don't like this movie, and for why I hate where a lot of franchises that have been struggling are heading, is, and this won't spoil it just in case you haven't seen it. It's not going to ruin the movie at all. It's just a little teaser at the end. The cringe connection to G.I. Joe. Now it's going to be a Transformers G.I. Joe mashup. And I have nothing against G.I. Joe. I like being in that world. I don't hate the movies that have been made. I'm not against them making more, but I didn't know that going into this movie that that's what they were seemingly trying to plan. I hate that. It just feels so much like a cash grab. We're out of ideas, and let's just bring in this other famous IP into this franchise to give it some new life. And I was definitely done at that point. Thank God that was the end of the movie, because that really left a sour taste in my mouth. And I'm not really looking forward to the other movies in whatever way they're going to do that. So I could be proven wrong. I would love to be proven wrong. Maybe it's going to be amazing, possibly, but I really, really doubt it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments if you feel differently or if you feel the same way. That is a light 1.5 out of 5. All right, well, that is about it. Hopefully that was enjoyable. Like I said before, I will try and do that from time to time with older shows. and then also do new ones as well. And if you have any recommendations, suggestions, whatever, of what you'd like to see me cover, please do let me know. Please rate, review, subscribe, like, follow, all the things. Thank you so much to all those who have, and hope you enjoyed it even half as much as I did. And I'll see you next time.